Hey everyone, it's Shot back at it with a Awaken Chaos Era video, and in this one I'm going to be going over the patch notes for January 6th, 2022. It's a gigantic patch with a lot of changes. Now I've only briefly read over it, and I had started the recording, but I think I gave out the wrong impression, so I just decided to restart the recording and just jump right into it for you now. So the Winter Festival has ended, but the shop will remain open till the 12th. This is really solid change, or note, because some people might have missed it. Then we have Bran the Brilliant, a new event. I did not expect to Bran the Brilliant, honestly. It's kind of cool. I had to check out his kit briefly. If you want me to go in depth into it and just kind of theorize a little bit, I could do that. Just let me know in the comments. But he's basically a true damage HP nuker, max HP nuker, based on the enemy's max HP, kind of like Marion Shadowblood, but AoE and such, which is really cool looking character, really solid. Optimize the count reset function. Okay, so this is just optimizing resets, arena matching, reduce the strength of opponents in bronze and silver. Okay, so I didn't notice any really difficulty when I was in bronze and silver, but you know, for those of you that are, I guess it's a solid change. Added a point protection feature when attacked in the arena. The loss of points will not result in ranking down. So it's actually kind of funny. I had someone, I think it was Madhouse, if you're watching this video, but I think he was saying that he was winning on defense and he was getting ranked down. So I wonder if that will change that, but I guess this is a solid feature. When the hero pass is purchased, if there are less than 3 days remaining, a reminder message will now be displayed. Okay, they're just kind of protecting themselves there. And then multi-battle, now the status of the multi-battle will be saved on the device. This is cool. If I'm reading this correctly, it means that if you are in the middle of a multi-battle, it will save the kind of information that the multi-battle has gone through, and it won't just lose all your rewards. I'm not quite sure if it was previously, but if you crash, for example, which has happened to me, it looks like you're not going to lose all of your, your information from your previous multi-battles. So now we're getting into the real important ones, which is the buffs and nerfs for all the characters down here. First off, the values are calculated based on max skill, so this is the maximum potential for everything. Then we have Evra. The damage range has been increased from 100 to 200% to 150 to 200%, and the damage range has been increased from 30 to 60 to 40 to 60, and gunfire support can now apply defense reduction to the target for 2 turns instead of applying attack up. So this is interesting. First, I'm going to talk about the trait because I initially rated her trait as kind of like a C to a B tier trait in the overall scheme of things, because the attack up was kind of superfluous, which means basically that it was kind of redundant in that you were running with Connor typically or another attack up character, and you didn't need the attack up because you were already getting it. And so oftentimes I think the defense reduction is a better thing to have on her. Now, obviously, in some cases, the attack up is nice and you'd rather have that. But I think in general, the defense reduction is better. Now, however, that being said, you're going to have to build her with focus now, as far as I know. She's not necessarily like Jacob, who doesn't need focus. But this is overall a really solid change, just increasing the base damage here. And then, of course, on the ultimate, getting the base damage increase by 50% is actually huge. Now, in the rookie summons, I think Nathalia still stands up to Evra, and there's still debate in my eyes. I would take Evra because I think she's more fun, but I think if I wanted to progress as fastly and as efficiently as possible, I'd probably take Nathalia, if I'm being honest. So, really cool buff. I didn't expect Evra to get buffed, to be honest, so that's really cool. Then we have Desmond. Hopefully this is a gigantic buff to him. The probability of infection has increased from 60 to 100%, and then the health loss per round has been reduced. So, we have quite a bit of health loss reduction, which is nice because he was literally killing himself over time. Basically not doing anything and then killing himself. Now he's going to have that increased chance and then not kill himself as much, which I don't think is enough, to be honest. I know that he's doing a lot of damage in the higher level Void Tower, but in other areas of the game, I really don't see his use. I think he just needs a buff to Plague in general. I don't think this is enough. I would like to see a little bit more, but I think they're taking it slow because they want to overbuff Desmond, which is fine. Hopefully I see another one, though. We'll see. I obviously don't have Desmond. I've only tested him a little bit myself. But, you know, for those of you that you're using Desmond, let me know if you notice a gigantic difference. Probably applying defense down from 30 to 50%. So also just getting an increase in chances to apply defense down. Again, this is kind of a nice buff, but you do need to get focus on him if you want this to be a consistent thing, and oftentimes you're building him with pure damage, so the chance is nice, but you kind of do want to build focus on him if you want this to be a reliable thing. And again, the chance is a nice buff. And then we have Celine. Cooldown is reduced from 4 to 3 rounds. So for those of you that built Celine up, I know a couple of you out there have. I don't think this is quite enough, but it is a nice change. I would like to see like a small chance to freeze on her ultimate, or maybe just a multiplier increase, because she is just a pure damage dealer really at this point, and she just doesn't do that much damage. So then we have Freya. The effect of applying speed down is increased from 50 to 80% and applies bleeding on her skill 2. So this is nice. She was a debuffer in general, and just getting an extra speed down chance and an additional bleed is nice. And then we have Raven. The cooldown for skill 2 is reduced from 4 to 3 rounds. And then skill 3, the skill damage coefficient increased from 120 to 150%. So you weren't really necessarily using her skill 2 all that much. Now, you didn't want to use her skill 2 and then skill 3 because it increases her damage overall, but you really were sticking to her skill 1 and skill 3 for that damage increase, and then the poison application. I think this is enough for her to be kind of an interchangeable piece of the poison cup? Not really. I think she needs a little bit more or something, because she just doesn't do enough damage to justify her in a lot of the comps. Is she solid? Yes. Is she like going to be a staple? I don't think so. And then we have Vance. Trait increase, the ascension effect damage from 20 to 30%, and then we have skill 2, just a 50% damage multiplier increase, and then another 50% damage multiplying increase. So I think Vance was already a solid damage dealer, single target damage dealer already. I had him rated pretty highly on like Guild Boss, for example, for water. And I think this just increases by a ton. Getting a 50% damage increase for both of his skills and a 10% overall damage increase is really, really solid. I think this jumps up Vance to be a really, really solid single target damage dealer if you need one, for example, for Guild Boss. Although Guild Boss isn't necessarily worth building for, so that's kind of unfortunate there. But I think he's really, really good based on these buffs. I would like to test him out myself. I have a couple copies of him. And of course he's fusible, so I think this is a really, really interesting change. I did not expect Vance to be changed either. And then we have Bran. From what I remember, I think this is the beginning of the nerfs of these characters down here. So we just removed the taunt probability from 100 to 50%, and then the skill damage coefficient has been buffed from 50 to 80%, and then his ultimate removes 1 negative effect instead of 2 negative effects. So overall, I don't think this is a gigantic nerf to Bran, but it is a decently significant nerf. If you're using him in PvP, removing 2 negative effects is pretty big. So it's actually kind of like a buff for those of you that are fighting Bran. But if you have Bran, I'm a little disappointed because I didn't think Bran was actually like super overpowered. I just thought he was a really, really awesome character in a lot of situations, which made him such a high rated character on my list. Is that he could be slotted in so many different teams and then just provided so much. Oftentimes the taunt at 100% would allow you to chain taunt in Void Tower and basically really lock down someone, but you can't do that anymore. I mean, you can still do it, but to much lesser effect. And so the damage increase, you're not getting much out of it. Really, you used him for the taunt. And then reducing the change to 1 negative effect cleanse is kind of a big thing in PvP. So overall, I'm a little sad to see Bran nerf. He's one of my favorite characters. And I don't think he needed a nerf, really. I think a lot of other characters needed nerfs before him. And then we have Rickard. When taking damage, the damage reduction is increased by 5%. So this is before the change. And then after the modification, it's just a flat 10% to 20% damage reduction instead of 15% stacking to 30% stacking. So it's actually a small buff to him at the beginning of the battle, but obviously a very hard nerf at the end of the battle because you're not getting as much damage reduction. And of course, you're going to be having that damage reduction longer than you will for that beginning initial damage reduction. So, okay, I did think his passive was really strong, and it oftentimes led to him being able to solo content, which was probably a little unfair. So I could see a little bit of a nerf here. I'm okay with that so far. And then the probability of applying attack down was reduced from 80 to 50%. So yeah, I was oftentimes using this and applying attack down every turn. So I could see a little bit of nerf there. And then we have before modification removes all negative effects and restore 30% maximum HP. Removes all negative effects, but restore 10% of health per negative effect that is removed. Okay, so overall, what this does is it basically nerfs Rickard's solo content potential and solo survivability. So instead of just like giving you a bunch of attack downs, a ton of healing for himself, and a ton of damage reduction, now you have less damage reduction, less chance to apply attack down, and less healing for himself. And unless you're getting a ton of negative effects on you. So overall, I think Rickard probably needed a nerf because he was just soloing content. It was a little too strong. So I'm not too upset to see any of this. I would have preferred them still give a base healing, maybe like 15%, and then increase by 5% per negative effect that is removed. Other than that, I probably think that he needed a nerf, to be honest. I have used Rickard, and he literally was soloing bounties for me. I did it on stream. He would literally like 1v3 bounties, which is a little unfair, if I'm being honest. So, and then we have Hacran. The effect of increasing the max HP up value is reduced from 5 to 3 stacks. So I think this is a really solid change. I think Hacran needed a nerf. Am I sad to see it? Yes. Am I using him? Yes. Is it going to make my team maybe not completely Queen 12? Maybe. But overall, I think this makes the game healthier. So I just want to say, this may sound a little negative so far, and obviously they're nerfs, so they're going to be negative necessarily changes to the game, in a sense. But overall, I think these are actually positive for the game overall so far. And I just want to mention that this is, honestly, in my opinion, this is kind of helps with the healthiness of the game, because I think the game was a little too easy, and I think there are some characters that are a little too strong. And so, honestly, you could probably just buff the dungeons in Stage 12, and I'd be fine with that, because the game, Stage 12 dungeons, was too easy to accomplish, in my opinion. So, seeing a maximum of 3 stacks is probably a good thing. In my eyes. It was a little OP, especially getting to that 70%. Or 75% max HP increase to about 45%. I think it's still a solid character. It's just not really broken. And for those of you that are using Zatlux in your teams for Queen, you're not going to notice this that much, because you're only going to get to 3 stacks about anyways. Then we have Nathalia. It looks like the skills have shifted power. So instead of 100% damage in A1, it's 80%. And instead of 180% in skill 3, it's 200%. So I do remember that the William changed. So I want to talk about Nathalia and William together, because I think oftentimes you're using Nathalia with William. So William, the base damage increase of all teammates is reduced from 50 to 80% to 40 to 60%. So this is actually a big change for William. And it basically changes the idea of, when you have William on the team, just A1. Oftentimes that's the case when you have this extremely increase to damage with 80%. Now it's 60%. So now you just kind of have to think about what characters you want to A1. He's still a solid character. He still provides what he was providing before. He just has a slight nerf, and I think he probably needed it. I think William was a little strong for those of you that are using him. And I do think that it was not necessarily a good thing for you to just use your A1s over and over again. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think in select cases you want to use your A1s. But the fact that if you use William and Nathalia together before, you're just, okay, turn off your skills, you're going to use A1 every time, is not necessarily a good thing. I think in select cases you should be turning off your skills, and not always. And then, of course, in conjunction with Nathalia, I want to talk William first, because Nathalia is ran with William in conjunction oftentimes, and now I don't think that there's actually a case where you're going to want to turn off her skills, because overall, if you combine the two between William and her skill 1, it's 140% damage, where skill 3 is 200% damage, so a 60% damage increase, which is actually quite significant. And if you're using her in areas that I was using her in, for example, Endless Trials, Guild Boss, Campaign, and Void Tower, oftentimes your skill 3 would get reset. Not in Guild Boss, of course, but in those other areas, your skill 3 would get reset. And so this is actually just a buff, especially for me, who uses Nathalia quite a bit and doesn't have a William. So this was kind of a buff, in my opinion, to Nathalia, at least for the way I'm using her. So that's kind of nice. And I do think that Nathalia was definitely strong, and she kind of outclassed a couple other characters out there, which is fine. I don't think that every character should be equally as strong and really strong. But I think this is just a damage shift, and I don't mind this change. I actually kind of like this, especially for me. And then we have Santis. In battle, the triggered attack effect can no longer trigger the trait. If I'm reading this correctly, it looks like this curse set proc will not work on her, which is actually, I don't like this nerf. I don't like the idea of nerfing synergies. I like the idea of nerfing power. So I think they should have just nerfed her trait and kept the synergies with curse set. If I'm reading this correctly, now if someone says, okay, this is not exactly, you're missing the idea of how this works, you can let me know in the comments. But I think this is just nerfing the curse set proc. So I don't like that change. I do think Santis needed a nerf. I don't like how they went about nerfing her. And then we have curse set. Before modification, after attacking, there's a 50% probability of launching a bonus attack. And then after modification, after attacking, there's a 35% probability of launching a bonus attack. So there's a nerf to curse set. This basically what this means is people who are already super good with curse sets like Cyrus, like Nathalia, probably still want curse set. But for those damage dealers that were just like, okay, I'm using Curse Set because it gives me extra basic attack and that's extra damage, now you're going to want to think about whether or not 35% chance over the long period is going to give you more damage than having just stats or having an assassin set or having an avarice set. So now it gives a little bit more diversity, which I don't necessarily miss. To be honest, I think that, you know, maybe they could have just buffed the other sets because the other sets were selectively good, or maybe this does need a nerf. I'm not, you know, too sad to see this, to be honest. And then we have poison adjusted from settlement at the beginning to the settlement at the end. So this doesn't really change a lot of comps too much because oftentimes if you're going to kill a boss, you're going to kill them anyways. It doesn't really matter whether or not it's the beginning or the end of the round. Let me know if someone, you know, sees a point to this that actually changes. But let's say you were to die on the last round, and of course, like if you the poison proc at the beginning, you wouldn't have died. Well, then that's a big change. But I don't think this changes the overall state of things. And then we just have bug fixes. So overall, I just want to give my overall thoughts and whether I think this change is a good change or a bad change. So me personally, I like this change. And call me crazy, but I think the game was just too strong. What I mean by that is the power level of some characters were just too strong. The game was too easy. I'd like to see a little bit nerf and a little bit of diversification. I would have liked to see a lot more buffs. That's the one criticism I could see, is I would have liked to see a lot more buffs for a lot of characters, because there's a lot of characters that out there that are just unusable, or in my eyes don't really have a place in the game at all. Like someone like Balberith, for example, I think he could have used a little bit of a buff, because I just don't see a use for him, really. Obviously, he has select uses, and yes, he does have those uses, but they're not necessarily super great uses. So I just would have liked to see a little bit more buffs in general. But I think that the nerfs that they did were kind of, you know, reasonable to necessary. And, you know, some people might, you know, criticize me for saying that, but I honestly just think that, you know, yes, you put resources in. Yes, you could say that, oh, they should give us a refund. But I just think that even with the nerf, these characters are still good. And they're still doing what they need to do. It's just not overpowered, which some of these characters were. So overall, I think the change is fine. And I do like a lot of the buffs, and I do like the nerfs. So let me know if you disagree in the comments. And I'm sure that this is a very polarizing opinion and change for a lot of you out there. But that's what I think. And I hope to see you for the next video.